welcome to another episode of Data Discussions with me, Kate McDermott, and my guest this week, Andrew Webber. Andrew is the founder and director of an independent insight consultancy called Human Theory, specialising in human behaviour and insights. With a stellar career behind him in data-driven CRM, insights and analytics, Andrew has worked both agency and client side, so knows all the pain points of working with data from every angle. He also knows the joys of using analytics to drive real change and understanding around customer behaviour, and has built a successful business in what is a very competitive landscape based on hard work, passion, and an innate ability to deliver real value for companies embracing data. So Andrew, welcome.
Thanks very much for having me.
Good to have you. Andrew and I have known each other for a very long time. I placed him years and years ago, and we've kept in touch ever since. So I've seen you start your business and grow your business from scratch, which has been really lovely. And we've kept in touch very regularly over lockdown. It's been, super useful for me to just get kind of feedback from you in terms of how you've seen the market change, the challenges that you faced. And I suppose, that brings me on to my first question quite nicely, my first formal question. As an owner of an insights consultancy during the pandemic, how have you seen your clients' needs change and kind of the questions that you're receiving change?
I think it's really been, it's quite industry specific really. So I think the overarching thing is that obviously behaviour is changing much more rapidly and in ways that we've never seen before. So we're getting a lot of people kind of wanting to see what's happening on a more regular basis. So we do a lot of tracking of not just cultural themes, but kind of behavioural themes and attitudes and things like that. So that's kind of the overarching thing, is that we're doing a lot of kind of weekly, fortnightly kind of tracking of a particular audience, or more around the kind of changing needs, I guess, of that audience. But I guess from an industry point of view, it's kind of been a bit, some questions have just stopped coming because ultimately I think, we've done a lot of work with machine learning to reduce food wastage, but obviously if that client then closes all their stores, they're not making any food anymore. So at the moment, so obviously that kind of, those kind of questions have dried up a little bit with the change in kind of office locations and working from home and things. But we've also worked a lot in healthcare around mental health, how that's been shifting, how people are, what the needs are in that space, and actually partly it's quite, it's quite a bleak picture, truthfully, on a kind of national level, but trying to kind of positively look at what is it that those needs are now, and how are they changing, and actually that is a rapidly moving thing. So we've been busy on that front, whereas we're not reducing food waste anymore. Hopefully now we're helping the nation's mental health a bit more instead. So kind of industry specific really. We were lucky enough not to have any big travel clients or anything like that, which I know has been one industry particularly hit, but it is really industry specific really.
It's fascinating. I've talked about this quite a lot, and keeping in touch with people like yourself, other agencies that I work with. I mean, this was kind of right in the midst of lockdown. I was talking to a couple of guys who head up analytics and data strategy for some of the big agencies, and they were saying, a lot of the work they were doing was more kind of business analytics almost, literally trying to help these clients through a crisis, and helping them to adapt their entire business strategy rather than just looking at customer or marketing. And also, of course, as you've said as well, customer behavior changing dramatically. The profile of what a customer looks like for a particular company, I think for most companies, has changed beyond, will have done. Do you have any of your clients just kind of leaning on you as a resource to help them through the crisis?
I think particularly in healthcare, actually, just because they were extremely busy and they've got a lot of people running at 100 miles an hour. And I think what's great about that particular client actually is that they just want more and more information and opinions around the room, and then that group will make decisions on things based on as much information as they can get. So I think we play a big role in getting that changing consumer face of the insight and what the changing needs are from a healthcare, particularly mental health. But obviously the bad thing about this pandemic is that there are other needs that aren't being met now from a healthcare point of view because of obviously not being able to go to the doctors and things like that. So
Yeah.
We're working a lot on increasingly, female health as well, because that's one of the hardest hit areas. And I think, I think they've leaned on us heavily, but I think it's kind of, they've put together a team of people across business that actually pull in as much information as possible, and then they sort of take that onwards internally. So we've kind of bolted on, I guess.
Is that a cult for that particular client then? This is a healthcare provider. Is that an actual cultural shift for them, or were they always, did they embrace data as much as they are now? Do you think?
I think they would. I think it's sped up a cultural shift. I think it's probably fair to say. I think they have been trying to be faster with access to data and insight, and I think they're on that journey. I think, like many businesses, this process has really sped up out of sheer necessity, really. The kind of way people are working, but also the access to the information that they need and are getting. So I think they definitely wanted to make the shift, but I think it's probably, put the foot on the accelerator a bit.
Yeah, that mirrors what I'm hearing from a lot of companies as well. So brilliant. Okay, well, so as we said earlier, your insights consultancy is heavily geared towards data science, in particular NLP. Obviously, as I say, I've known you for a very long time, and when we worked together as candidate and recruiter, you were working in very traditional data-driven CRM, data strategy. I think your journey from where you are, from there to where you are now is really interesting. And actually, I haven't talked to you about this in depth before, but it'd be really fascinating, I think, to understand how you've ended up actually starting and managing your own successful insights consultancy. Because a lot of people do tend to get siloed into one skill area, and I do get this question a lot from candidates: is how do I make that shift into a different part of the data industry? And it'd be great to hear from somebody that's managed to do that successfully. How you approach that? How did you even come up with the idea?
I think there's probably two sides to that. One is that I think a lot of people will tell you that I've got a short attention span. And I get bored quite easily, but on the other side of that is that I do enjoy change. I quite enjoy a changing environment quite rapidly, and I think what I found on the more traditional kind of side was that you do get siloed even within the company that you might be working in, whether that is agency or client side, and I've done that type of role on both sides. Truthfully, I just found that I didn't find it particularly inspiring after a while, just because I felt that the questions were the same year on year. The client might be different, but the questions are often the same. And actually, part of that was because I didn't see any real changing. Like, there was no real diversity of thinking. I don't think. I felt it was the same people asking the same questions, and as a result, getting to the same answers over and over again. And I just felt that I just felt a little bit stuck, really, because I think a lot of people that work in those types of roles want to break out, and because they have a lot to feel that they have a lot to give in terms of a wider strategic viewpoint. But I just think that you do get a little bit stuck, actually. And for me, I just kind of I've always felt that the approach and the methodology is kind of a means to an end, really. I'm not wedded to a particular way of doing something. In fact, as I say, I kind of get bored doing the same thing over and over again. So I am always looking for different ways of doing things, because the end result is the most important. I think I was lucky because when I worked at the last agency I worked at before, setting up Human Theory, I had autonomy to kind of decide the strategy of that department. I think for me, I've always been most interested in human behaviour, psychology. I actually wanted to do psychology at uni, but didn't obviously work hard enough at school, so ended up not doing that. But I've always been most interested in that, and I think language is a really untapped kind of area, and actually it's a real window into who people are, what their kind of attitudes are, but also really what their motivators are and their barriers, and ultimately this for me is all about identifying a human need that might be unmet or might have changed. Obviously COVID's a really important time for that really, because things are changing so rapidly. But
Yeah.
I mean, I was lucky enough that, I was in charge of that area, and I just kind of went out and spoke to a lot of people that I felt were probably inspired by the same things. And they came from kind of everywhere, really, in terms of, one guy was a data scientist who previously had done something else. One of the girls that I work with now, she was a grad at the agency, but actually we were all inspired by the same sort of things. So I think for me, like, I was lucky I had the opportunity, and then I just kind of did it, really. I like to learn by just doing stuff, which I know isn't how everybody does it, but for me it was a case of, I'm interested in doing that and I want to do it, and it's about the end result. So it wasn't really a big jump. It didn't really feel like a big jump. I just felt like I want to do that, so I just kind of did it, really.
I mean, it sounds like, number one, you've obviously surrounded yourself, as you say, with the right people who are on the same wavelength, and bring different skills to the party. And I know a few of them, you've introduced me to them, and I can see that. It's data strategy, particularly in kind of data planning, is really interesting. So I'm doing some work with a client at the moment who are hiring into a team that we've placed a lot of people into, and because that very traditional pool of data strategists and data planners is really quite finite and very small, particularly within the agency world. I know sometimes you have those kind of teams internally, you see it a bit more frequently now, but it's forced me over the years to really go and find people with transferable skills. And what's ended up happening within this particular company is they've ended up with basically a team of insight consultants. So I think you're right. I think there is a shift happening as we speak, particularly within the agency world, where it's about problem solving using data rather than just using it to plan campaigns. As you say, I think it's a bit stale. It's something that, as you say, is being done. There's no real innovation or change within it. And actually, just shifting how you use those skill sets, I think, is the key. And I'm starting to see it happen, which is really exciting and interesting because it is new. And I think people have to be like you and just have an open mind and think about how they can use their skills in a slightly different capacity. And then you just need clients that are open-minded as well, I think.
Yeah, and actually, maybe not even clients. Maybe, sometimes it is clients, but sometimes it might be that you want to do something that is about building a case study or something like that, but it's really about building your experience and your capability as a team. And I think the diversity of thought thing is really important. And the people that make up the team that I work with, and frankly, I kind of worked with them for a few years now in a few different capacities. I feel that they don't come from a traditional background, and I don't feel that I come from a traditional background in that, before, even when I was working in traditional CRM and data strategy, I ran a bar, I've done lots of different things that, I've taken a very zigzaggy journey, I guess, and I don't expect people to come out into a role at 23 and decide that's what they want to do for the rest of their life. It's got to be interesting as well, though. And I think that's the main thing. Let's do something that's interesting and work back from that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to echo that. The most interesting clients that I work with are interested in disruption and driving real proper change from top down within even massive brands. But it's what, for you guys as employers, I think you end up attracting the best talent because, as you say, it's just something different and it's interesting. So okay, just moving on to this is a really, really broad question, so you can answer this in any way that you wish. But what do you think is the biggest challenge facing the data industry today?
I'm going to answer that in a really broad way, actually. I think. I actually think that the biggest challenge is a societal challenge, and I think data, like tech, actually plays a big part in what that change and challenge is going to be. And I think so the data industry is quite similar, I think, to tech in that it's, I think, quite inwardly facing, and there's a lot of very, very smart people within it. And I think sometimes people are motivated by being smart or being the smartest person in the room or doing something new that sometimes I think often, and you can see tech's kind of, this has happened with technology, those smart people have gone forward and done incredibly innovative and new things, without really thinking about the impact's going to be in a kind of wider societal sense. And I think the big challenge is probably accepting that you don't advance data and technology in isolation. Like, you don't do it in a little bubble. It might not be within your company, actually. It might be somebody else takes the advances that you've done, but that's not in a kind of silo. As much as, you know, people complain about being in silos all the time, actually nothing is in a silo. So if you create some new way of doing something, whether particularly with AI and machine learning, which is obviously very powerful, and a lot of people use it for a lot of things, there is a ramification of doing that. And I think the challenge for me is, as all of these things advance so rapidly, like processing power is actually the major cause of a lot of this advancement. And I think people, the challenge is the industry as a whole, but I think it's probably the people within it, and probably the leaders within it, really need to think, okay, what is the next step if we do this? If we build this product, what could it also be used for? And I think most people don't think broadly about the impact of things. And I think that for me is a big challenge, is kind of, there's so much advancement to be made in other areas that aren't profit driven. And, you know, we've started more and more to work with a lot of people on that side of it. And actually it's mind blowing how the things that we take for granted as data professionals or people that do certain things, how far behind a lot of these places are, a lot of these more, I'll use the term kind of for good as a kind of umbrella, but how far behind they are, because a lot of the talent is obviously looking at profit and money, and a lot of the time it's, you know, I wouldn't exclude myself from this either, but like a lot of it's ego driven as well. You know, you want to be smart and you want people to notice that you've done something clever, but really I just think that the advances to be made on the other side of that coin are so enormous and it could be made very rapidly. So I think the challenge is really, how does the industry, I don't want to say police itself, because I don't think that's right, but how does it encourage more people to look outward and at what else could be achieved other than massive growth and, you know, huge profit and things like that, because it has an impact whether you want it to or not.
Are there any companies that you think actually are, again, this kind of links to it's a bit of a segue to my next question, but and the next question is, you know, which businesses or do you think are really kind of innovating well with data, and are there any that you think link well to what you've just said there?
I think so. We started to work with Nesta a little bit in terms of how you do use data and technology to advance, I guess, what you'd call more societal impact side of things. So they are a kind of company that tries to, you know, innovate and, you know, bring people in and get funding for people who want to innovate. And we've been working with a partner of ours actually called Avora, who I've known their CEO for a long time. And they're a great BI platform, a machine learning platform. And I think, so we've been partnered on that, and we're building something that helps people whose jobs, I mean, it's kind of ironic actually, people whose jobs are most in danger of automation. We're building something that will enable job advisors and job programs to identify more kind of personal, based on their needs, but, you know, jobs to try and stop them from going long-term unemployed, or actually people that are long-term unemployed, you know, getting them out of that. And I think kind of Nesta are great because they look at many things in that respect, but I think truthfully a lot of it is unseen, and it's hard. It's almost hard to talk about this because, you know, that type of work that does make a big difference and do all that kind of stuff, you know, they don't go in for awards. They don't win awards for things like that because that's not what they're driven by. And I think it's quite difficult, even if you look at some of the awards for data, particularly in marketing. There's not much difference there. If you go back 5 years, a lot of the stuff is very similar. And I think, you know, maybe sometimes they'll call it data science now, whereas 5 years they wouldn't have. But I think truthfully, like a lot of the advancement is done under the radar, and that's what is almost a bit of a PR problem, I guess, for, you know, data and technology for good, is that people don't shout about that as much because they're just kind of doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think we're coming on to the final question now, and I would love for you to talk a little bit about human theory and what you guys are doing. Obviously, you're going to have, I appreciate kind of NDAs in place and that kind of stuff. But yeah, anything that that you think would be interesting for the audience out there, you know, to understand about kind of different projects. I mean, the Nesta example is great. But yeah, just give us a bit of an overview about what you guys are doing and kind of the kind of work that you're getting at the moment, I suppose.
Yeah. I think, I mean, the last 6 to 7, maybe 9, I guess, really months has been pretty challenging, truthfully. I think both from a business point of view, but, you know, mentally on myself and the team as well, you know, it's been a tough time, really. And I think a lot of it's been a good time, though, I think, to really reassess what are we doing here, like what are we trying to do, and who do we want to be, really, I guess, as a business, and what's the type of work we want to do, but also who are the type of people we want to work with. And it's been a good time to assess that, both on a kind of shared values point of view, but also I think I wouldn't have just said all of that stuff. I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't then say, well, this is some of the stuff we're doing in that area, because it is a big focus for me personally, but also for the business, is to gradually start to focus more on what can we do that improves things. So we work a lot in mental health, trying to understand a bit more empathetically what do sufferers say about certain things, what are they going through, what are needs that aren't being met that maybe certain providers might be able to help, and actually kind of shape services and things like that really might not be there, that are kind of emerging as needed. So we do a lot of work on that side. I mentioned, you know, we've used machine learning to reduce food wastage. That's not happening at the moment because, you know, there's no food being made, so there's nothing, you know, it's really, you know, COVID took care of the food wastage there, I guess. But I think that's kind of stuff that, although it's very different to natural language processing, it is, you know, the end goal is to do something positive. And you know, the Nesta stuff, obviously I mentioned, that's kind of almost a passion project that we're lucky that we got some funding from Nesta for. But you know, we've been trying to roll that out, and I think we're doing a pilot in about 3 weeks' time. So I think really, like, for us, partly it's been a personal kind of shift, but I think I'm lucky that I work with people that share those values, really. And I think we're looking very hard at, like, you know, we want to work with people that want to do something positive, whether that's candidates, whether that's you know, the team, whether that is, you know, partners, clients. You know, we're really passionate now about kind of meeting people that share that. And I think a lot of this is going to be, going forward, is a lot of relationship type based. You know, do we get on with these people and do we share the same values? And that's how we will kind of define the future of the business. I think really it's not going to be about necessarily growth. When I started the business and now, I think I probably am not, I'm not, you know, thinking, oh, I'm going to sell this in 4 years' time. I'm just not thinking that anymore. So, you know, this is really, I think it's much more sustainable in both senses, from a stress point of view, but also, you know, impact as well. So yeah.
No, that's brilliant. And yeah, we've had this, well, myself personally and Colin, I know, again, we talked about this loads over lockdown, and I'm sure there are many other, again, smaller, you know, small to medium-sized companies that are in the same situation. I completely agree. It's given us, a big positive is it has given us that opportunity to take a step back. And, you know, I've started doing this kind of stuff, which is, you know, for me personally, a huge kind of part of the job satisfaction that I'm now really focusing on. It's a shame we can't do it face to face, but I'm doing well one day. But yeah,
in a few months, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm really pleased to hear that it's going well, and there's that, as I say, that new kind of level of job satisfaction and reward from what you do. You know, the working world is difficult for everybody at the moment. I think that's safe to say. But if you're going to do it, it might as well make sense to you and be something that you
exactly.
So brilliant. Well, look, it's been so great to catch up today. Thank you so much for taking time.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Probably a ridiculously busy day. And yeah, if anybody's interested in Andrew and what Human Theory have got to offer, then please get in touch with me and I can refer you across, or obviously visit their website. So thanks again.
Thank you very much, Kate. Great to speak to you.